Thank you so much. So growing up, I probably had the most traditional classical music background that you could imagine. I played in quartets. I learned nothing but Mozart. I was following all of the rules, and I was on that set path to hopefully join a symphony one day. But a few years ago, some news came into my life that changed that path for me. I was at my parents' home right outside of Washington, D.C., back in the States, and one night my mother walked into the room that I was in, and I could see that she was crying. And this was the night that she revealed to me that she had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And when you hear something like that, your mind just races with questions about what's to come. But her tears that night were not tears of the future, the chemo, the radiation, the surgery that she would eventually have. Her tears were from the past. You see, for years at this point, she had worked at a job slowly rising up the set ranks. But this was the night she told me her true dream of wanting to open a jewelry store, and how she loved building things and always wanted to work with her hands. She told me story after story of this ideal version of herself that had not been manifested yet. How her creative spirit was somehow limited by the standards and the expectations around her. And I remember seeing this brilliant and passionate person who was hurting mostly from a choice of an action. Now, fortunately today she's healthy and she's doing well, but this conversation had a dramatic effect on how I viewed my own relationship to the world. I began to ask, was there an ideal version of myself that I wasn't reaching for because I was just following the standard way of thinking of others around me? And my mind immediately raced back to the violin. You see, I always had dreams of creating my own unique style of music for the instrument, but I'd never done it because classical music seemed like this immovable 400-year-old force, right, with so much history and structure and tradition. And I thought, who was I to challenge something like that? But this conversation, it moved me to start challenging those beliefs, to view the music of Mozart not as the end-all and be-all, but as one person's beautiful perspective, and that I too had the opportunity, the capacity to offer my own. And so around this time, I began to compose and share my own music, including the piece that I just performed for you. And after nearly 20 years with the instrument, I had finally begun to bring my own unique sounds, my own unique vision to the world instead of just playing notes that other people had written. And so the idea I invite you to ask yourselves this afternoon is, when it comes to your life, personally and professionally with your work in this industry, are you writing new music? Or are you just playing notes that have already been written in the past? Are you creating the sounds of tomorrow? Or are you just accepting the sounds from yesterday? And I literally mean the sounds. So the inner voices in your head, the spoken culture around your teams and your organization, the limiting beliefs that something cannot be changed simply because it has been the same way for years. Now, I believe that everything we interact with, from the homes we live in to the environments that we work in, that they are all malleable. And there's nothing stopping us from leaving our own unique imprint. All it takes is a simple mindset shift. A shift towards emphasizing process over product. And a shift towards realizing that the creations of others are not these untouchable works of magic, but the result of a culture, a process, a mindset that we can learn from and use to create our own. And so today, I'm honored to perform for you, and I will a couple more times. But more importantly, I'm honored to share a bit of my journey, share a bit of my process as a musician, and hopefully inspire you with two ideas that you can use to not only write new music in your lives, but in the lives of the people around you, and use to create a more vibrant culture in your organizations where people can dare to be different. But before I jump into that, I'd like to play a piece that I wrote that's based off of a song that I think a lot of you will recognize. Thank you. Thank you. By a show of hands, who recognized the theme of that piece? Smooth criminal, right? So the most important job for me as a musician is to try to connect emotionally with my listeners, with my audience. And to do that, I'm always looking for recognizable themes, recognizable melodies that I can weave with the violin so that my listeners can relate to it. And then, I'll add my own variations and technique, but it has to start with that emotional connection. That's why I do what I do. But I didn't always have this perspective. I used to be one of those performers that would just obsess over technique. Lock myself in a practice room for 4 or 5 hours a day. And when I would go up to perform, the only things on my mind were, is my hand position correct? Am I playing every single note? And I would be so consumed by these operations that I would miss a very important point. And that is that music is about purpose. Purpose. I would spend hours preparing every single note, but at the end of a performance, it did not matter because the audience would look lifeless and unmoved. They didn't care if I hit every single note. They just wanted to feel something unique for me. The first idea I'd like to offer today is this. Is there an opportunity for you yourself to take a step past just optimizing technique in your work? To shift focus from the operational to the emotional? To define and prioritize a melody, a theme, a purpose that will guide your own performance? We can get so caught up sometimes with hitting all of the notes, right? Locking ourselves in this metaphorical practice room of checklists and day-to-day activities that we often neglect that higher vision, that resonant idea that we each have in the back of our minds as individuals. But if we can tap back into this, we often realize that our calendars are so full of things for which we cannot articulate a reason for why we are doing them. Perhaps this week here at HR Vision is an opportunity for you to check back into your why, to realign and lean into that greater internal purpose that truly drives you to do what you do. And whether it's your colleagues, your clients, maybe even your family members, the audience around you will be sure to feel a difference. Now, when I was studying classically, I took part in what was called an orchestral development program. And in the program, there were multiple ensembles that varied in skill level, from very beginner to extremely advanced, professional. And in order to progress to the next level, you had to pass a test in front of a panel that was called the jury. The jury. Now, don't confuse this with a traditional court reference. This was anything but a jury of your peers. This was a collection of the scariest, most intimidating teachers that they could find. People that just lived to see a student cry in shame with their head down. And you would go up to perform in front of the jury, and they would ask you to play one of the pre-selected excerpts of music. And as soon as you would lift your instrument to play, they would simultaneously give you these stares and pull these bright red pins out of their pocket. You see, they had the sheet music right in front of them as you were playing. And anytime a performer would deviate from what was on the written page, change one note, they would give you this crazy glare and then proceed to mark up the entire sheet as quickly as they could. And, I'm sure they had a great time doing this. I'm sure they all went out for beers and cheered to the hopes and dreams that they ruined that day or something like that. But as a performer, it created this uncomfortable feeling where I became afraid to take risks, afraid to offer anything different, afraid to try anything unique, no matter how good it might sound, because I knew with pretty much certainty that it was going to hurt me in the end. The second idea I invite you to think about today is that I truly believe that each of us are members of a jury in our lives, whether we realize it or not. that each of us has a set of performers in front of us, and they come in the form of family, friends, colleagues, employees. And these people, these performers, are playing music that we have the opportunity to either weaken or enhance. We can scold them for playing notes that aren't exactly written on the page that was set, or we can find it within ourselves, within our organizations, to help develop their own unique sounds. And our ability to do this will ultimately determine the innovative spirit of ourselves and of the people around us. And so for the performers around you, for the performers around your organizations, are people just pulling out the red pen? Or is there an opportunity to support a soloist, an improviser who has an idea that isn't exactly written on the page? I'd like to close out by performing one last piece for you. It's a piece that I composed earlier this year that's very special to me, and I'm honored to share it with you. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you. Thank you so much.